Hi, my name is James, and today I'm going to show you how to make this responsive tab component in Framer. If you want to follow along, the remix link is below in the description. Let's get started. The first thing I want to do is add the tab section. So what I'm going to do is add a stack in here. I'm going to set it to width fill, and then I'm going to duplicate a frame so that we've got 3. We can set the height of the stack to say, we'll do 95 for now, and then I'm going to add some text in here. So in the first one we had sign up, in the second one we had automate, and in the third one we had analyze. I'm going to select each one of these frames, and then if I use the plus icon here, that turns them into stacks, and you can see that centers the text. Then whilst I'm here, I can apply a fill color. I've got a card color style that I set up. It's just a gray with 15% opacity. So I'll select that, and then we'll add a border, and we'll select that card as the same as well. And I'm going to set a radius to 8, and then I'm going to select the text within those stacks, and I'm going to apply a text style for the body. Again, this is something I set up earlier, but it just is the inter font style, color white, and got some various breakpoint sizes of 18, 14, and 12. Select the body, and that looks pretty good. I'm just going to go up here, and I'm going to name these stacks so that we can keep track. I'm going to call this one tabs. I'm going to call this one a tab, this one a tab, this one a tab, and I will just adjust the gap slightly to 16. So that's looking pretty good for our tabs. Next, we'll add the window where the main content shows. So we're going to need another stack. I'll set that to fill and fill height, and then I'm going to delete one frame. We'll rename this to window, and I'll set a border on this, same as before. I'm going to set a radius of 8, same as before, and then I'm going to select this frame, and we're going to change that to a stack, and we're going to add in here one stack for the text, and we'll add another stack for the image, and then we'll just delete these frames that we don't need. I'm going to delete the background here so I can see what's going on, and then we'll set the text one to fill and fill. We'll do the same for the image, fill and fill, and for now I will rename this as a row, and we can reduce the gap on that to 0. Then I'm going to add some text into the left hand side, so we'll add text here for sign up, and then we'll change this to a stack as well, and duplicate that text, and I'm going to paste in some content. There we go, and we'll set that to fill, and we'll set this to fill as well, and we'll rename this stack to card, and then I'm going to add some background to that card. We'll set it to fit content on the height, and I'll add a border as well, and then we'll add some padding, 24 padding, and I'm going to select text, and I've got another text style here which I set up earlier just for a heading. It's just slightly bigger text and semi-bold, and so we'll select that for the heading, and we'll select body for the body text, and that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to add some radius of 8, and then we'll select the text stack, and we'll add padding there again, 24 of padding, and then we need to add an image. So I'll select this frame, go to fill, select image, choose image, image 1, I'm going to set the type to fit, and then I'm going to select the image and give that some padding. And the image in the demo at the beginning had a gradient background, so we're going to add that too. So I'll select this frame, add a frame around it, call that background, and illustration. Select the background, fill, gradient background, accent color, opacity of 0, and that looks pretty good. What I'm going to do next is create a component, because that allows us to create variants of this setup. And to do that, what I need to do is select the two main stacks that constitute this component, and I'm going to wrap it in a stack. You can see that in this case it collapses the bottom bit because only the tabs have a defined height here, a fixed height. The window and the row, they're all set to fill, and so we need part of it to have a fixed height. I'm going to set the window to have a fixed height of, say, 500, and that brings it back. But now what I can do is select the parent stack, right click, and select create component. We're going to call this tabs component and hit create. Now I've got a component created and a variant and a primary variant. And the first thing we're going to do is just add the basic interaction to these tabs here. So I'm going to select the variant, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and then I can move over to the right and plus a variant. So now I've got two variants. And if you can see the primary variant at the top here, any changes I make to this variant will affect all other variants. Whereas any changes I make to variant 2, or indeed other variants, will just override settings that I have on the primary. So to start off with, I'm going to add some interaction to the primary variant. So I'm going to select this sign up tab, and I'm going to add a border and select the accent color for this border. And then I'm actually going to make this a little bit larger as well. So I'm going to set the width to 1.5 frames, and that sets it to be larger than the other two by 50%. And then when I click the second variant, we want it to move to automate. So I'm going to select automate, I'm going to set a border like I did before, and I'm going to do 1.5 frames. And you can see it highlights the width there to show that it's being overridden. And here, I'm going to undo those overrides by setting the sign up back to how it was before. And then finally, I'm going to add another variant for the third tab, and we're just going to do the same thing with analyze. So add the border and adjust the sizing and undo the other override. So I can actually reset this override and take it back to normal, because that will take it back to the setting that it had on the primary. And that's actually a better thing to do rather than just keep adding more and more overrides over the top. So now we've got the visual setup that I want. Next, I just need to add the interactions. So the first thing is that when we select automate, I want it to move to the second variant. So I can select this little lightning bolt and drag to the next variant. I can do the same for analyze, drag it over to the third variant. And then now you can see that actually these interactions have already been added to the second and the third variant. So all that's left for me to do is on the second and third variant to add an interaction on the sign up button. So I can do the same and take that back to the first variant. Again, select the sign up button, take it back to the first variant, and that should give me the basic interaction that I need just for the tabs. So let's have a look. Okay, that looks pretty good. So our tab interaction is working really nicely now, and what's left to do is to create rows so that we can align the appropriate row within this window to the appropriate tab when it is selected. But before I go ahead and start duplicating rows and changing the content, I want to make sure that the row is actually behaving as I expect when I resize the screen. If I go into preview mode within the tab and start resizing, I can see it just chops off the component, but that doesn't actually give me an accurate representation of how the component would behave when it's actually on a page. And the reason for that is that when the component is in just component view, you typically are often finding yourself needing a fixed width or height just to give the component some shape. But actually, if I clicked the demo page here, you can see within the page, I can have a width that is more flexible, set to fill and fit. And when I preview this version, it does actually resize more appropriately. But I do have this unintended effect of the illustration cutting away there. So I need to sort that out. To do that, I'll go back to the component and I will select the illustration. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the aspect ratio, and then I'm going to set the width to relative and have that set as 100%. So now as the width changes, that should resize the illustration. But of course I need to do the same thing on the background. I need to lock the aspect ratio and set the relative width to 100%. Now I can go back to my demo page and review this, and I can see that now the illustration resizes more appropriately. We may need to change that later on, but that's looking good for now. Now we're ready to add the rows. So to do that, I'm just going to select the row and go Control D to duplicate. They're running acrossways here because the containing window is a horizontal stack. So I'm going to switch that to a vertical stack. Now the height isn't quite right. Each row, if I select each one, has a height set to fill. So they're proportionally filling up the 500 pixel surrounding window. I'm going to set the height of these to 500 pixels as well. And now if I zoom out, we can see that that's had the effect of creating a column here where just the middle row is in view. And what we're going to need to do to get the animation effect that we want is to slide these rows to the correct position depending on which tab we select. So to do that, I'm going to reselect the rows and wrap them in a stack. And we're going to call this stack sliding window. Now, I'm going to reduce the gap between the rows to 0, just so that I know this column is exactly 1500 pixels. And then I'm going to set the positioning to absolute and set the position to pin to the top. And now this has had the effect of setting the column so that the first row is in the top position and the other two are below. In fact, if I just change the visibility here of the overflow on both the window and the parent variant, that we should see better what's going on. So now we can see that we've got the first row and the second and the third. And what I need to do then is change the content of the second and third row. I'm just going to speed this up to save you some time. Keep going and we are done. That's looking good. So next thing, I'm just going to undo the visibility as I did before, and then now we need to add the interaction. So this one is looking as I want it to. Variant 2, I need to slide the window to -500, and that should bring the automate row up to the automate tab. Same thing in variant 3, move over there, select the sliding window, and I'm going to move that to -1000. Analyze matches the Analyze tab. Those three look set. I am just going to review that, sign up, automate moves to automate, analyze moves to analyze, back to automate, back to sign up. So that's looking good. Next, I want to double check how this component is behaving when it's situated on the page. So move back to the page and go to preview. If I do some resizing here, I can see that I've got another issue with the content clipping off. So go back to the component to see what the issue is. If I select the sliding window, I can see that the width here is actually set to fixed, so I need to reset that to 100% relative width. If I go back to the page and preview, that seems to have solved the issue, but I've actually introduced another issue here, which is now the illustration is resizing to be too big. And I can address that by selecting in, and I'm going to need to make these changes on every image. So I'm going to open up the directories here, and I'm going to select the background for each of the images, and I'm going to give them a max width of, let's say, 500. And back to the demo, preview, that's looking much better. So now I've got a nice working component for tablet and for desktop. But as you can see, as I move down to the phone breakpoint, things start to go awry. To ensure our component is responsive on phones as well, we're going to add a new set of variants which activate when we hit the phone breakpoint. So I just need to zoom out a little bit, select the primary variant and add a new one. Then I'm going to drag that fourth variant underneath, and we'll call this one the variant phone 1. Next, just a bit of restyling. So get it positioned in the center here. I think we're going to move the tabs down to the bottom, and we'll create a stack which is vertical this time, and take that to about a height of, say, 200. And that vertical arrangement I think is more appropriate for a phone layout. We can see the blue edge here is getting cut off because we've got this width set to 1.5. So we just need to make sure we change that here. And then now onto the window component. Any changes that we make here, we need to make to all 3 of the rows simultaneously. So I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to change that to a vertical stack. And then within each row, we'll select the text, and I'm just going to add a little bit more space here. So we can move the padding down to 16. And if we take the height from fill to fit content, that moves it up more snugly into the top part there. And moving on into the card, let's select each one of those. Whoop, here we go, each card. I think we can add a little bit more space into the card as well. And still, it's looking better, but we've still got this issue of cutting off the illustration. So I'm going to select the images and add a little bit more space in there. That's not made a whole lot of difference. So the next thing we can do is move into the background frames. And if you remember, before, the constraint was the width that was changing, and so we needed to set the width to relative 100%. What I'm going to do is now flip that so that the height is now set to relative. And that sorts us out, because now the height is the main constraint on how this illustration needs to look. Zooming out, I can just give this a little test to see if it looks responsive, and that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So now what we'll do is take that phone variant and we'll recreate another one and call this one phone 2, recreate the third one and call this one phone 3. And then we just need to reproduce the same interactions between these 3 variants, so that when we are on the phone, it can still move seamlessly between these separate views. So I'm going to set the sliding window here again to -500. That brings us the automate. I'm going to set the sliding window here to -1000, and that brings us the analyze. And then we need to update the tabs. The first one is fine, we don't need to do anything there. I'll just zoom into the second one. We need to change this border and add the border to the automate. And then on this one, we need to, again, change the border and add the highlighted border to this one. So that looks as we'd like it. Now we need to make sure the interactions are working. So because none of these are a primary variant, we're going to have to add interactions to every single tab in turn. So sign up needs to learn back to itself. Automate doesn't go up there anymore, it goes to here. And analyze, again, not up there anymore, it goes to here. Sign up, we go back there. Automate can go to itself. Analyze can go there. And finally, sign up back there, automate back there, and analyze onto itself. So that should be everything we need. Now go back to the demo page, and I'm going to add this variant to the phone breakpoint. So I'm going to select the tabs component, and under the tabs component, I've got the option to add the phone variant, and I can do that. Now, if I test this out, I can move down to the phone breakpoint and the interaction is working nicely. Just a final bit of tidy up now. On reflection, I don't need to have these interactions on the active button, so I can just take those away. And then I'm gonna scroll up to the primary variant, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of padding here and a border so that the whole thing is nicely encapsulated and we can tell that it is a component. And with those changes, I think we can go to a preview and we've got a finished responsive component. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe below. Thanks for watching and see you again soon.